Welcome to this inaugural edition of Talent Talks by MentorKart. We are in the season one. Let me first wish you, your family, friend, every loved one, Happy New Year. I just hope, wish, pray that this year 2024 is really a great year for each one of you and your family and loved ones. So, my name is Vijay Sethi. I'm the chairman of MentorKart. So we are in this talent talks by MentorKart. I just wanted to give you a background before we invite our guests for the today's session. So Ashish, who is our CEO, so Ashish and I were discussing as to what can we really do so that people across the country can learn from experiences of various HR professionals. The learnings that HR professionals had over the years, can they be disseminated across the country? About talent. We know that everyone is talking about talent. There's a huge talent shortage that one hears. What we are in these talks, series of talks, there'll be 12 sessions that we'll have over the next 6 months. So every 15 days, we'll have one session. So we'll be talking about all aspects of talent, be it talent acquisition, talent retention, talent management, talent development, anything and everything to do with the talent we'll be discussing over next. Every time we'll have one guest speaker who will be talking about his or her experiences, and we'll learn from this. So I'm really happy to introduce our first guest, and our first guest is Anuradha Jaggi Sharma. Welcome, Anuradha. Thank you very much for being our guest speaker and the inaugural guest speaker. And we'll always cherish that you were the one who really started our season one Talent Talks. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you and to your entire family.
Thank you, Vijayji. The privilege is all mine. It's always firsts are always special. I think, and I take
Absolutely.
that as a privilege, like I said, right? And thank you so much. Happy New Year to you and to our audience as well.
Thank you very much. So Anuradha is head of HR services at Swiggy. She has a great HR experience, as she'll explain. But I just wanted to share with you, apart from her HR experience, she also has very varied interests, which could also be really very a good learning for each one of us. So as I understand, she's a Six Sigma black belt. So Anuradha ji, coming from HR, having Six Sigma black belt, that means a huge focus on processes. I'm really impressed on that part. She's also a change champion, and as we all know, and I come both from IT and HR background, change management is something which really is very, very important to make any initiative in any organization succeed. And with us today, we have a change champion. Also, in today's time, when we know that all over there are huge amount of stresses with an individual, in the families, in the professional life, so you need someone who can really calm you down at all times. And again, Anuradha, what I see is that you are also a wellness and mindful advocate, and maybe I'm sure many more things which you will share with us. So thank you very much and welcome once again. Let's start with your journey, since I just spoke about a part of your journey, but I just want you to tell us about your journey and how this journey has really shaped up your entire HR career, all your experiences across organizations, and all the extra things like a Six Sigma or a champion or a mindful expert. How is this really helping you in your HR journey? So I'll over to you, Anuradha.
Thank you, Vijayji. Thank you for having me on your inaugural session, and congratulations to Ashish ji as well. So it'll be 22 years since I started working as a professional. Add 4 years of engineering to that. So I'm an engineering graduate. I've done MBA as part of my development plan in an organization. And what started as a non-HR entry into the workforce, nearly 22 years ago, and then one way or the other led into HR, and then of course, the rest is history, as they say. I joined, and anyone who would look up the profile, and you'd see I entered HR early on in my career. as a HR MIS expert, right? Really someone who was dealing with numbers and elements like that, not so much as a pure play HR business partner. And one thing led to the other. And at that point in time, shared services wasn't a thing that had started. Everyone in HR would do everything. But organically, and then as orgs continue to grow in size and scale, and in terms of complexity, and things coming into India, right? We started to have those back offices, knowledge centers, if you like, right? And then all of this gradually moved into a place which we now know as shared services. And then that's where some of this from, or my keenness to get into processes and gain some expertise through Lean, through Six Sigma. I wouldn't say everything was planned, like I didn't have it all worked out, but from some of these organizations that I've worked with, and you'll see the names, the environment there, the need, their own focus on excellence in terms of services and so on, led me into areas like Lean, into change. I am quite a curious person, right? I'm decent academically, so anything to do with learning and training comes easy to me, and I think that's one thing that I hold very dear, despite as many years and some gray hair. I think curiosity and learning is something that shaped a great part of my professional journey. You could be in HR, you could be in any other space. I think for someone to be continuously growing, evolving, learning is important. And then within HR, of course, having done projects and led teams and multiple other things beyond your job description, I think has how my HR journey is shaped. And I'm sure as we get into the conversation, you'll see bits of that. So yeah, here I am.
Yes, super fantastic. So from my own perspective, I'm also an engineer, also an MBA, also did a MTech, went into IT by accident, and then went into HR, and then headed IT, headed HR, and then so one of the key things which I see from your career and the word that you use, and I can resonate along with my own career, and that could be really helpful for a lot of our audience, that you can't really plan everything. As you rightly said, a lot of it was unplanned. And one of the key things in this entire thing is a word that you use, which is curiosity. So we need to be always curious and be open to try new things. When I was asked to head HR of a very, very large organization, I said, okay, let's try it out. And that's how it's. So if you are, then you can really get into various things, and there has to be a continuous learning. There's no end to learning. There's no age when you really stop learning and say, "Bahut ho gaya." No, you can't really.
And you'd agree that in terms of our academics, right? When one of the reasons I immediately didn't pursue my post-graduation after my engineering was I told my parents I'm done with studying, right? I've studied, I've done what you wanted possibly out of me. I've studied, and let me be myself. And that's when you think, oh, books are over, everything's done, and you've learned what you needed to be successful in the rest of your life. And you can't be more far from the truth to say, what you just did in school and college. Fair enough, you've got good grades and possibly set you on the right path. But what it takes to be a successful, and we all have our definition of success, or generally be having a fulfilling career across decades. It takes more than just those books, right? And if you're not into that space where you embrace change, for that matter, or say yes to things that you've never tried, you're not going to be in the game for too long, right? And I would still say that my time, if I can use that phrase, early on, the change was still slow, right? Things wouldn't change in matters of 3 months or 6 months or a year, right? Nothing really, and no new technology evolved in like 12 months. Now look at today, the
12 days.
the audience that we have today, every 3 months, every 15 days, there's something that's thrown at you. in the name of technology. And if you're not curious, if you're not learning, if you're not questioning your own ways of learning, if you're stuck in one way or the other, it's not going to help. So, remaining curious, saying yes to stuff, and learning continuously. The learning here is very different, right? No one pushes you to do it. There are no marks, there are no grades. You got to just apply yourself
Yeah,
and keep moving. I think that's what I would.
absolutely. I agree with you. And then there's always this thing which is taught to us that start saying no. But actually, if you have to grow, I'll encourage people to also start saying yes. A lot of times people say no because they're afraid, they're scared as to if I get into this new path, what will happen to me? So it's not just about saying no, but a lot of times it's taking that risk and saying yes and doing that extra effort. I know when you really take up a new job, it's not easy, or a new role, it's not easy. You have to put in a lot of efforts.
Yeah.
But I think that is what really shapes you up. So you spoke about this entire thing. There are people coming from academics, and then you get into. So let's talk about talent first. So all companies, everyone is talking about talent. Now, as I see, my favorite line is, as they say, water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. Everyone says, all companies says, we don't get people, we don't get candidates. There are vacancies which have been lying pending for months, years in some cases. You talk to anybody outside, they say we have applied at hundreds of companies, we are not getting any job. So which means that there's a kind of major dichotomy as to either there are too many candidates who are not getting jobs, and there are too many companies who are not getting candidates. So from your perspective, I just wanted to understand what's your view on this as to why this gap is there, and what can companies really do to ensure that their talent shortage gap can be really addressed. And similarly, from a candidate perspective, you want to share as to what candidates can do so that they really get decent jobs.
Yeah, sure. And keep me true on time, because this in itself could be a conversation,
So
right?
maybe 3 4 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take the employer context first here, right? And I may be generalizing this,
Absolutely.
but I do feel that part of the problem arises from a place where we're trying to solve a new age problem with old ways of thinking, right? And look at that in terms of how our job descriptions are. Look at how we want our talent onto certain locations, how we want to monitor some of that, what qualifications are we putting on that talent, right? And you would see that from your own experience, and so will I, that a lot of that hasn't changed from the time I entered the workforce. And even today, when we start and go and interview the talent today, right? I'm talking 22 years, right? And you get the gist, right? So there is, and it's not like no changes happen. We've brought in technology, we've gotten speed, or assessments and tests, and a lot of that stuff to say, how do I prune, how do I filter the right candidate, and so on and so forth, right? But a lot of things about attracting talent is also meeting that talent where that talent is. And I say that from two places. One, meeting that talent from a readiness standpoint, right? You're eyeing colleges. Now, the number of colleges that we had, technical colleges, non-technical colleges, is multifold, right? Where we would have 4 or 5 IITs, IIMs. Now look at the number, and I'm also talking about not just the IITs and IIMs. But we still want, like the top 2% of that. The colleges are full of students. Of course, that whole shift has to happen. Now, into that, add a thing which is pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Now, let's look at ourselves to see how we were attracting some of this stuff anyways, and then how are we doing this in terms of what we were doing before pandemic, and what we can do, what pandemic has shown us that we can do with talent, right? A typical one that I see is talent is at place A and you want the talent to be at place B. That whole mobility stuff restricts, right? And you lose candidates. But orgs want it. A lot of companies want it. And I'm pro the point which says we have enough talent, right? And those who are looking for jobs actually have enough jobs to apply for. But are we meeting the talent, like I said, where the talent is? One, purely from a readiness of skills and so on. My talented school and college graduates, of course, are not job ready, right? They're not job ready in a lot of ways, and that's where maybe places like MentorKart step in to bring in that. But are we leveraging it? Is another place for orgs to think of, to say, are we meeting the talent where the talent is from so many places, so many aspects of it? Now that's first part of it. There is the new problem, but we still stuck with some old ways of doing it. And then the second part is from a candidate or a talent itself, right? Where talent is applying, but is seemingly not getting the responses that they like, or not getting the companies that they like, right? And that's another place. And this is from a place where I have now nieces and nephews who are graduating from college. They come and seek advice and say, I want to do this and do that. And when I hear them, everyone just wants to start with this top brand, highest salary, fanciest of the places, and so be it, right? And that's fair. But that's not how life works, right? And I think for our talent to know, and our young talent and our new graduates to know, that's there are dreams that you need to work on, and then there's reality, and you get started. Careers are built over a period of time. You'll get where you want to, right? You got to start. You can't. In the name of, whatever, you have to be mobile, you have to be learning, you have to be challenged. You can't just say, oh, just because I've spent 4 years in college, I am ready for this, such figure job, and I want it in the top, 500 MNCs that I have. I think there is that problem, right? Because the companies that you're eyeing for only have so many jobs, but then India as a country at this point in time has no dearth of opportunities when it comes to tech, fintech, or any kind of knowledge-based job that you can get into. But if you restrict yourself one way or the other, then there is a problem. So here's an employer wants a certain way. Here's a new colleague, a new entrant who wants it a different way. But if they all saw the bigger availability or pool of opportunities and just open their mind, there's no stopping.
So I think the way you explained it was fantastic. I'll just pick 2 points in the interest of time. From a company's perspective, as you rightly said, meet the talent where the talent is. Don't think that talent is everywhere. You just go where it is and then talk about that talent. And from a employee's perspective, potential talent perspective, don't really kind of jacket yourself into saying that these are the only organizations, this is the only role that I can go, and because it's the point that you said is right. Careers are built over time. When I started, I don't even remember, I started as maybe a supply chain consultant and ended somewhere in my life. I never thought I'll get into whatever I was doing later. So careers are built over time, and you can't really straight jacket yourself. And that's what candidates need to do. And hopefully there'll be water for people to drink, as we can say.
And that's what it's like. I repeat, and it's a cliched thing, right? If I can do it, if you can do it, kids or students and talent today is far more talented, right?
Absolutely.
They definitely can do it. But yeah, there is, and there is, of course, that level of counseling, guidance at that point in time. We all felt lost when we left colleges. We all felt, not prepared to enter a workforce or suddenly be thrown into a more structured place like an organization. Sometimes some of us, pretty much quit after 3 months, 6 months in our first jobs, and so on and so forth, right? So there is that level of preparedness, and it doesn't fall into a place where employer wants to do it. It's not a thing that the young talent can solve for themselves. So they need, possibly mentors and counselors and a lot of that infra, which Vijay is actually missing in a lot of places too.
Absolutely, I agree with you. No. So it's not just about if I look from a company's perspective, talent acquisition is one part, which is really required. But to my mind, based on my experience, I can say that retention is perhaps more important than acquisition. It can't be a kind of a maybe a leaking tank where you continuously put something and it's leaking at maybe even a faster rate. So
Yeah.
companies need to really work a lot on ensuring, and one really hears those kind of things where the attrition rates are 20, 30, 40. In one company I saw it was almost 70 to 80% attrition rates. So which means that the HR team is really continuously looking at CVs, bringing people, and another team just doing full and final settlements and people moving out. So
True.
I just want to understand from your perspective as to what, from your experience, could be a good retention strategies for the organizations. What can they do to retain talent?
Yeah, and having worked in as many organizations, Vijay, I don't think anyone has really nailed it at that place. But
Yeah,
I think the ones who or where the talent sticks around, or organizations that have been able to create some level of stickiness, is largely attributed to what we call as a culture, Vijay,
yeah,
right? And there is
yeah,
no of course, there are tangibles around that, right? So your comp, your work environment, asset, benefits, and so on, that you can really write on your contract and attract and say, oh, we allow these benefits. Some of that, or this is the compensation, or these are, the other frills around it. All of that is important, and I'm not going to take, the importance of that away, because it does attract talent, right? And all of that. But what keeps you there? Because the moment you get your first salary, or the third one, or the fifth month in the organization, you pretty much get used to it, right? And you say, I'm here, I'm working, I've earned it. And then what comes into play is culture, and there's no one thing, right? And in my experience, in my personal opinion as well, I think our frontline leadership, right? People who deal with this talent on a daily basis, and it's not just your CXO somewhere and your top leadership somewhere and your HR sitting and designing policy. It is that one or two, or a group of people handling this majority talent in the organization, the effectiveness of their leadership and their culture building practices is what I believe makes a lot of difference. It still doesn't keep everyone in the organization. You would still have some amount of attrition for different reasons. Like we say, we can't make everyone happy, and it's not about making everyone happy. The idea is to have fulfilling careers, have meaningful work. All of that is important, and orgs that are mindfully reviewing this, looking at their pulse feedback, employee feedback, what is talent getting attracted to, what is talent leaving for, actually doing some of these benchmark comparisons in terms of where the talent is going, and so on and so forth, and really with speed making some of those shifts internally is possibly the solution, right? And those who are, or orgs that have been able to kind of figure this out, are on that journey. It's also a journey, right? It's no two people are similar, no 2 years are similar. Business scenarios change, economic conditions change, and your the organization's fabric keeps changing. So culture is a very fluid, intangible that you got to work. But I do believe that your early touch points and people that work most closely with you, if that level of leadership is effective, they can keep you whole in terms of your development, in terms of your engagement, in terms of your learning, and of course the wider company policies. I think all of that, there is some sweet spot there that kind of adds to the stickiness.
fantastic. I just got a message that on my WhatsApp. There's a question which the backend team has sent me. So he says, "Ma'am, can you give us some examples of some culture initiatives?" So basically, maybe one or two tips on what front leadership can really do from culture perspective.
All right. Yeah, sure. So, so again, culture building stuff is your value driven system, right?
Absolutely.
Open communication, transparent communication, knowing why we're doing certain things, why did we not choose one option versus the other. So leadership at all levels, right? Communicating transparently, people getting treated fairly, right? One of the biggest, in fact, in the year, if you see in that whatever is the appraisal year in any organization, you'd see the spikes in attrition is after that performance appraisal cycle, right? Where you've either not been rated what you thought you would be, or even though you got rated perfectly well, you didn't get the compensation, right? There are spikes like that, right? Now, performance and culture is not a point in time. It's an ongoing thing. So and I can't say one initiative, but these are, if your org has a value system and that everyone is seen demonstrating those values for the longest period of time, not out of convenience, not out of fancy, opinions, but consistently across. Those are some of the culture building things, right? Again, very intangible, very person driven. Yours could be different, mine could be different, but coming together, leading people from the frontline where it matters, like 70-80%, influencing these young and restless, if you like, in the organization where we see attrition. And you got to also rely on data and analytics and point out why people are leaving, what you can tweak in your policies. So really being very agile. I mean, gone are those days where you would look at your policy, once in 5 years and say, have I reviewed our benefits 5 years ago? You can't. You have to be at it, looking at it year on year. You possibly can't do it more often, but if you can, then why not, right? So really being agile, listening to your people, changing some of that to build a culture. So
Absolutely. I think just to add to what you said, so as I believe, culture always flows from top. So if I'm a frontline manager, I'm a manager over there, and then I have team in front of me. I can't expect my team to drive the culture, but I first have to
absolutely.
lead by example in the culture part. So one of the key things is that, as you rightly said, we need to be agile. We need to have a honest, transparent communication at all times. I'll just add maybe one or two more words to that. That one of the key things from building a culture perspective is also to be empathetic for a leader. You can't really be just cut and dry, but you have to understand other person's viewpoint and ensure. And when you really are a caring kind of leader, automatically the entire culture, the intangible part of it flows, and everyone knows that this is someone who really cares for us.
And we
Because
all know that it's easier said than done, Vijay,
absolutely,
isn't it?
that's
Right?
what I was just going to say.
The real pressure, and I use the place or the burden that are also possibly for effective leadership is on the front line, is because that's where everyday things happen, right? That's where your org gets shaped from opinion standpoint, and it is
Yeah,
leadership that has to drive it. But when it comes into action, it's really, the masses getting influenced is at the front line. And like you said, it has to be the nice thing, but we know on a daily rigor, when you have goals and targets and sales and everything else to be pushed, sometimes, most times, leaders forget that they're dealing with a human being who will not forget this treatment, even if the goal is
yeah,
met, right? So we got to be mindful,
absolutely.
and that's, I think, is a
Yeah.
difficult part.
So you're always, as a leader, always tested under pressure situations. Under normal situation, everybody works fine. But it's only
True.
under pressure situations how you behaved, how you really work with that individual. That individual will also always remember that though I was
Exactly.
under pressure, but my boss did. Because you also need to remember, and that's more for the audience part, that people really leave their bosses, they don't leave organizations. So it's that
Exactly.
frontline
And
leader or any leader at any end who has to ensure that they are the ones who are responsible for talent retention. While all of us might feel that it's HR's job to ensure that they come up with
exactly.
policies, they come up with everything.
Yeah.
But each manager in the company, irrespective whether he's a finance, production, whatever, is actually the HR manager for his team or her team.
Absolutely.
And they need to do it. And your perspective on that, and rather, you want to add anything to that?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I am. And speaking for myself, right? When we define the organization culture, I know I define it in terms of the most frequent people that I work with, the teams that I work with, the leaders that I work with, right? I don't work with 6,000 people every day at the same time, right? I do that with
Correct.
the stuff or some of the people around me on a more frequent basis, and depending on how I see them behaving is how I think my opinion of company's culture is influenced, and that's therefore for an org to then say that every individual behaves as per the org behavior or value system is of course a big task, but that's how I think some of the things are built, and that's where stickiness comes from, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So while we are at the retention part of it, one of the key things also companies focus a lot is on talent development. But again, one sees a kind of thing. There are a lot of times when a lot of leaders feel that I'm giving too much training to my team, this guy might leave.
Hmm.
Or that people who are getting trained, they may feel that the company has nothing to do. They're just sending us for training every other day. Or they're just
Mhm.
organizing training sessions day in and day out. We have so much work to do, we don't have time. It could be either way. So,
Yeah.
from your perspective, I just wanted to hear as to what is the role of training, talent development in the entire thing, or training in any organization, both from retention perspective and also from motivation and also productivity, all three of them.
Hmm. All right. So I'm gonna, kind of break it into a couple of
Yeah,
pieces and give you some perspective, right?
absolutely.
And this also part of this also goes back to the place where the employer thinks that they don't have enough talent to do
Yeah,
certain kinds of
absolutely.
jobs, right? And so organizations spend uh, again generalizing there, but spend a decent amount of money and effort in learning and development, because we know even though someone has come into the organization, but the kind of work or complexities generally, whichever environment we are in or whatever industry we are in, we'll forever be evolving, right? And there's only so much that you will bring in from the outside. Even today there are technologies that you don't have talent outside, right? You have to train your own, because with that speed you can get to market faster. So speaking from the org standpoint, these are and being in HR where a lot of L&D teams are typically aligned with, I know there is serious investment of effort, of time, of design to say what does the org needs, and it's totally to solve a business problem, right? It's not HR fancying new or trainings to be doled out because everything costs money, everything is time. It's purely a business solution for a business problem that designs or investments or budgets like that are put there, right? So if you see an email coming from HR, it's typically for a mandatory training, for a compliance, right? Everything else is a business, even that is a business problem, but I'm saying
Correct.
more from a development perspective, right? So orgs really mean it. Leadership really wants you to go for that training because it brings back the business, or it boosts productivity, or wherever, it shifts the org from one place to the other just to be able to do better business, right? So if you get the opportunity, I mean, the way I want then the talent to look at it is during your paid hours, if someone says stop working, come for a training, please go happily, attend that training, make the most of it, because one, you're getting upskilled, someone else is paying for it, and you're still earning your salary, right? So just make sure that you go for it, and also make the most of it. It just makes sense to get trained, get upskilled while you're at the job, stay relevant at all times, bring that value back to the organization that you're in. And no one can take that away from you, even if you leave that organization. It's not one of those assets that you'll return, right? You're a trained,
Correct.
professional wherever you go. So it's absolute value add. And I'll again link it back to one of those things about curiosity and learning that I told you. So one of the orgs that I worked with is where I got the lean training, right? Lean was a 1 week training. Black belt was an 8 day training. I was made to travel to another country to get some of those certifications, right? If you get those opportunities, you don't think whether it's relevant or it's a waste of time. It isn't. right? Someone's really invested
Yeah.
time and
And
effort.
and
So
there's nothing like waste. It helps you at any time. The learning is always
absolutely,
there.
right? You may think at that point in time, oh, I could have read about it, and maybe in today's time you could think, ah, I could have YouTubed it and learned it, but not everyone learns that ways, and there are these very professional looking places that do this training. So employers are invested in this. They want you upskilled. It meets their requirement as a part of the org, or as a talent who needs to be relevant for a longer period of time. You want to attend these trainings, right? There is only so much that you can read. There's only so much that you can possibly ask someone, irrespective whatever it is, whether it's your job, whether it's it's a technical training. Of course, you need experts. If it is soft skill training, you need experts. It helps, right? So you've got to go and add to that, add to your effectiveness, right? And sometimes you're getting trained not just to do what you're doing today, but someone is preparing you for your next role. So you've got
Absolutely.
to see
Absolutely.
from that place as well. Everything in the hindsight would make sense, but invest that time, spend that time. And yeah, those who believe that we've got more work to do, of course there's always be more work to do. It is one of those chicken and eggs, but like I said, right, if someone is really enrolled you, nominated you for a training, I would say don't miss that opportunity.
There's an interesting comment that has just come to me, which says that my manager does not allow. I am nominated by HR, but my manager doesn't allow me. He says that no, work is more important. So anything that I can tell my manager that training is more important.
Um, s- yeah, I mean, you can always tell your manager. The chances are that manager is not going to listen to you because they've already refused it, right? And but having said that, there is. Well, I don't think there'll be ever a free day in the year where you say, oh, on
Right.
that day I'll go and train. I think the idea is to find that time or that lean period, or like the right opportunity from a time and business standpoint, and maybe give feedback to your HR to say the timing of your training is bad because it's peak time for my business, right? And likewise, use that channel to also say that my manager is not letting me go because I'm assuming that managers also under pressure to deliver certain deliverables and so on, and it doesn't just fancy not sending you to training, right?
Yeah, correct.
So there has to be
Yeah,
one way or the other to come out of this. But insisting that you need the training, actually documenting a well thought out development plan, Vijayji,
yeah,
also helps. So if your manager at the
absolutely.
start of the year already knows from you that I in the year I want to do 1, 2, 3 or acquire 1, 2, 3, 4 skills, and that I need your support, get their buy-in ahead of time. Don't be this random person and say I'll go for 300 trainings but do nothing. That's not how it works, right? You have to have some thought out developmental plan, some documented developmental plan to say, if I'm wanting to go from point A to point B, these are 3 skills I need. For these skills I need to attend these trainings, and possibly this is the time that I can go for that, and work on that with your manager. In those situations, managers typically become your sponsors and help you
Absolutely.
grow and succeed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that that maybe it goes back to the point of culture, where there has to be a session for the managers and the leaders telling them that development of their own teams is important. It will help them. It will help their own productivity, not just the individual's productivity, but the productivity of the entire team and the leader himself or herself. So that's where the culture and the change champion part of it, where we do a bit of mindset change of a lot of managers and leaders, that if you are investing in the training and development of your own team, it's actually you're investing in your own self and your own business. It helps.
And I can tell you, Vijay, this is the biggest challenge that any L&D team faces, which is to pull people from their desks or from their field
Correct.
into trainings, right? And it's one of those things, right, where business wants a problem solved, they create a training module, but then they don't send people to attend those trainings, right? And I'm sure everyone's then trying all kind of influences to say, how do I get people into these trainings now that we've invested? um, and it is challenging, right? It is
It
challenging
is.
because there's work happening every day, there's delivery happening every day. You never have spare resource to say, while you on training, there is someone else who can fill up for you. So there are some balancing acts that I think managers and HR and leadership got to do there. It's not an easy one, but uh, it's also it also doesn't help if you don't upskill your talents. You got
Absolutely.
to make time, right?
Absolutely.
So just getting that
Yeah.
right in terms of what works for that organization is very important.
Yeah. So you spoke about few words. I'll just pick from what you said. You spoke about challenging. There are a lot of challenges over there. One has to do a balancing work. Now, let me just go to another part of the entire talent cycle, which is the talent management part of it. And one of the key things you briefly spoke about was the PMS, the performance management system, where again this kind of balancing act between the manager trying to fit people into a bell curve, trying to ensure that people really don't get upset at the end of it, they don't leave. So a lot of times I've seen that I use that term that for me a performance management is kind of a double-edged sword. Right? It helps a lot, but if not done well, it actually creates more problems in the organization and more demotivated employees. Even some of the guys who really get promoted feel demotivated.
True.
Some of them who get good increments, they feel demotivated in the entire cycle. So how does, number one, would you agree to me on this one that this is one where there's a huge amount of balancing act or needs to be done very carefully? And second part is what companies really do to ensure that this performance management experience, and now we are in January, so people will be really starting to think of as to what needs to be done, or there are a lot of people who really get into kind of refreshing their CVs so that in case something goes bad, they get into a market to look for a job. So
True.
how can we make the experience really pleasant both for the employee and the manager, and at the end of the day for the company? So any tips or any thoughts or anything on PMS?
Yeah, sure. So I do agree that it's a difficult one, right? And this is where it still goes back to retention, engagement, development, if you like, and so on and so forth. And there is enough that's already said on what could be a right way of managing this, or doing your performance management and so on. Definitely one of the ways that we've seen still operational is the rating system. And we all have an opinion about it, right? Not getting into what system a particular company deploys, or what methodology they deploy. um, what we have come to agree, even if we haven't changed the systems in a lot of organizations yet, is that performance management is not once a year activity, right? Talent management, or that thing where you give me feedback and expect me to be engaged for the rest of the year or feel motivated to do more or better, is it can't be just a 30-minute conversation once a year. And that brings us to a place where it has to be a continuous conversation. Right, you can't score me like a school student after my half yearlies and unit tests and annual exams, to say, oh, because I did three things right, I got such and such rating or such and such score. Right, it has to be a continuous process. The outcome has a tactical element to it, which is to say, if I give you a particular rating, then I can assign you a particular percentage of bonus, and therefore there is an element of what you get paid from a CDC. So I'm sure we can figure that out as well. So there is that element to say, because I can then do that part transparently and more accurately. But when it comes to the real talent, the person that you're dealing with, the conversation has to be continuous. My manager has to tell me what I'm doing right, wrong, or needs improvement in certain areas on an ongoing basis, on every goal, on every project. If that means I'm spoken to every week, fair enough, right? You may have my scorecards and tell me I've done, I'm red, green, amber on a particular metric. Even then, it warrants a conversation to say, what do I do to get better? Right, and that piece of talent development, managing it holistically, right? And you can't just see me as a person who's come to work just to work on your metrics or just to work for your organization. I come as a full human being with so many things on my mind, environment and stuff. So, again, meeting the person where the person is, no two people are the same. Your org talent philosophy is also important to uphold, right? All orgs, while whatever vision on talent philosophy we may have, we know that we want to do a very merit based performance reviews and performance cycles, right? And how do you then really bring it beyond just a rating, right? How do you bring it as a whole year throughout a career kind of a thing, right? So it is a difficult one, but yeah, painful at this point in time when it's a rating period, or and some bit of that is like you said, people get demotivated even if they've got the ratings or if they've got the promotion, is possibly how some of this is communicated,
Yeah.
Vijay.
Or there are times when they feel that someone else also got. I did so much, I deserved, but why did he or she get it? I think that also
Right, it's
creates
human,
problems.
and exactly, and from that part of it, you can't take the human element away.
Correct.
Everyone has to be reasonable. Not everyone's reasonable. But the deeper question is: do we need bell curves? Do we need
Yeah.
do we need ratings once a year? Do we need some of that that just makes me feel less of me while I know I've worked hard the whole year?
Yes.
Everyone has that feeling, right? So how do you break that from once a year or twice a year conversation into a more continuous one where I know I'm learning, that I'm on a journey, that it's a it's a long-term game again, and that I do have a future in the same org beyond 12 months, beyond 24 months, whatever, like long-term careers in organizations and sticking through it, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of
A lot of
conversation.
things need to be done.
Yeah.
And also, I think one key thing in this entire thing is also training to the managers as to how to conduct the entire performance appraisal, how to really define the KRAs, so that it shouldn't really happen that the KRAs are vague, the conversations are even vaguer, and finally the end result is frustrations all around.
Absolutely, it starts from there, right? If you you can't just motivate me to to do my job when I don't know why I'm
Wow.
doing this, right? What's my goal,
Correct.
right? So some of those are given, right? And the orgs that are not getting it right to the last person standing will find disconnects, right? So half the org is in different direction, or top part of the org is running in one direction while the bottom part is clueless. So you got to have some of that very clear in terms of your mission, your vision, your strategy, turning into your goals and actions, all of that. Whoever's got it right to that extent, I think is possibly on the right track, right? And I'm
I think
assuming,
one,
yeah.
yeah, I think one of the guys has really picked up your line and he's put in a question as to why even have an appraisal system? Why can't all of us be given same increment level? So maybe
Absolutely.
I'll start with that, and I'd like to add your
Mhm,
get
mhm.
your perspective on this. To my mind, if we really don't have an appraisal system, the guys who are working well, they'll feel demotivated. There'll not be any motivation for people to really perform well. They'll say that whether I work, whether I don't work, I'll get the same increment. So why should I really put in that extra effort? That's my, but I'll hear from you.
Yeah, and each one is entitled to their opinions, right?
Yeah,
And I different things motivate different people, Vijay, honestly, right?
yeah,
I'm not so much for this philosophy to say give everyone the same increment despite, right?
yeah,
There has to be an element of merit
Absolutely.
Whether it was in school because you scored well, because you responded well, you got your gold medal and
Correct.
a bronze medal, or no medal,
Absolutely.
because it pushed people to do. Now there are enough of those researches and books written on it to say why is one way other better than the other, and so on, right? The whole social sector, the whole business or commercial part of it, and so on and so forth. So that debate maybe for a different time.
Yeah.
If you
Absolutely.
ask any org that's gunning for you know business growth or profitability and so on and so forth, needs a workforce that's ready, or at least that part of the workforce, or at least some part of the workforce really going after it. And that doesn't come to everyone just because they get up in the morning and they say, I'm going to work and today I'm going to make my organization the most successful. So you've got to have some level of motivation, some level of reward, and while whether the reward for you could be a cash award, for me it could be a holiday. I mean, some of that could be different, and you can find ways, and maybe that's where orgs needs to find what works for each one, and again meet the talent and meet the employees where they are. But saying that give it to everyone irrespective, find me an industry where it works, and then do it, right? But at least in places and companies and industries that I've
Yeah.
been, I think
I've
with
not
the
seen
amount
it.
of competition, it seems difficult.
Absolutely. It seems to me it's impossible kind of thing, because at the end it has to be about meritocracy, and it has to be about
Absolutely.
rewarding that merit
Effort, that output.
efforts.
You can
Ab-
have orgs that sometimes, irrespective of the output or the result, sometimes also reward the effort, and maybe fair, right? Because sometimes not everything is in your control, and maybe okay with that to some extent. But I
yeah.
think it's what matters at the end is really the result, and of course how you got there has an influence. But can you just reward someone even when your company didn't make money, right? Doesn't make sense. So
Absolutely. No, really fantastic. So if I was to just sum up, I know we are kind of running out of time. We'll have a few more minutes, but maybe just sum up as to what we have discussed till now, and that you can add few things. So I really like the way you started with that. We are in now 2021, 2024, and this is new age. So in this new age, you can't really be using old age tools mindset for hiring. So we need to meet the talent where it is, the line that you used multiple times. So where companies need to really change their policies, change their thinking, and a word that you used initially, even get into as basics as changing the JDs. Some of the JDs could be written, some of the things in the JDs which you are expecting from your employees or talent may not even be existing today. You may not even get, because the JD was prepared some 7 years back or 15 years back, and those things don't even exist today, or not. They're not really relevant in today's context. People,
And I'm
HR
gonna,
department,
just for the fun of it, Vijay, I'm gonna ask the audience here, go Google or go onto some of the job portals and open some JDs, and you'll see, you read the job description. It's funny, right? You read the job description and say, such an important role, such is this thing, right? And then you see, well, most times the comps are not mentioned, but you see the compensation there, and you're like, you're gonna make the person do all of this, hold the person accountable for so many things, but pay peanuts, right? And it's you see the humor in this, quite a
correct.
parallel.
Yeah, even when I see some of these JDs in IT, some of the technologies that are mentioned over there, they're kind of Baba Adam ke zamane ki. No one,
Or
the
sometimes,
students are not there.
sometimes expecting all of that in one person
Yeah,
is
or
another
expecting 50, 70 things in one person. So
is
you can't
another
really do that. Yeah.
yeah.
So when you're writing JDs, I think the companies really need to invest time and energy right from a JD writing, from a policy where you are looking at talent, right from the acquisition to moving to the entire journey within, right from hire to retire, the management piece of it, where you need to keep the employees engaged, develop those employees. Performance management, whatever we are doing, has to be really something which is positive and a developmental oriented, rather than a penalty oriented, saying that no, we will, I'll see when the PMS comes, I'll give you that rating. But that's always there in the
Yeah,
mindset
we
of
would
many
be,
of the
yeah. So the
managers.
weapons, yeah, the employees have, or our colleagues sometimes, let the engagement survey come and let me ding you there. And the
Yeah,
manager
correct.
has this to say, let the PMS come and let me ding you there. It doesn't work
It
too
doesn't.
well. Old ways, but yeah.
Absolutely, these are old ways. So we need to really change many of these, and also each of us in the organization, whatever level we are, whatever function department we are, we should always remember that at the end, we are also HR manager for the company. For our team, we are the first point of HR, and we are the first HR managers. So effective communication plays a huge role. You need to be empathetic and really, really policy and process oriented. You can't really be doing a lot of stuff in ad hoc manner. And of course, we spoke about the developing the entire talent and why people should also encourage their own teams to attend trainings. And from a individual perspective, you rightly said, when companies really investing in you, you are getting all those certifications free of cost and are being paid off for that. And maybe in sometimes even going to fantastic locations to get trained.
True.
So why not jump at those opportunities and do it? So don't really come up with excuses as to why your current work is more important and training is not really that important. And then we spoke about performance management. So this was the overall scope of discussions that we had. We of course didn't want to get into too much on the compensation benefits part of it today, but maybe any last uh, parting thoughts from your perspective on the entire changing talent landscape, or from a company's or individual's perspective?
Um, yeah, so one, thank you so much for that engaging conversation, right? I'm assuming the audience would find this valuable. Um, and while the orgs are doing so much, Vijayji, right? I'm associated with a company right now, and then I've worked, right? I know there is a real intent in developing talent and retaining talent. The amount of effort, thinking, investment that goes into it is real. And it's not whether HR is doing this. It's not a HR alone thing, right? It's a leadership. It's everyone wanting to develop, to retain, to attract talent. On the other side, it's for us or our, and if the audience is largely younger, early careers and so on, I would. Money is important. We all come to work because there is a paycheck at the end of the month that hits. It is important. I'm not going to take that away, right? But as you start your career, my take on this is pivot more on learning, developing yourself, observing, taking a bullet or two, making mistakes, right? Nothing is held against you when you're early on in your careers, right? Um, I wouldn't say take risks, if that's not the word that you want to, that resonates with you, but uh, put yourself in it, right? Wherever, whatever opportunities. You're early on, you don't know what 5 years from here is going to look like, leave alone what 20 years is going to look like, right? So that whole philosophy to say live in the moment is also important and true for your careers. What a long-term career looks like actually is made up of these 6 months and 1 years and 2 years of your investment in you. So stay with that, learn, continue to grow, develop. Don't just wait for someone to come and tell you. Observe, right? The companies have a lot of resources, right? We have every social and technology element put in there. But that's one thing that I would say, that stay on that learning journey, keep your curiosity on, observe, ask questions, and before you call yourself settled, or before you call yourself a professional with so many years of experience, it is your learning journey. If you just kind of concluded your education, let me tell you, your real lessons are going to start now, right?
Correct,
And then
absolutely.
from there. So yeah, it's interesting. Don't lose heart. It's a long journey. Everything makes sense in the hindsight, but you got to start and you got to stay in it, right? You got to stay in
Absolutely.
it And that's what I would tell everyone.
No, that was really the way you summed up was amazing. And continuous learning is very, very important. It's nothing to do with the age, it's nothing to do with years of experience. And with the entire world changing so fast, I think it's really even becoming much more important to continuously update ourselves. So
True.
thank you very much. I'm so happy, and I'm really happy that you are the inaugural speaker for our season one of Talent Talks.
I'm not
The
feeling the
way
pressure
you
at all, but thank you so much, Vijayji. The pleasure is all mine.
no, I think the way you covered the entire gamut was really fantastic, and with this background that you have of all the organizations, big, small, everything, and all other non HR aspects, inputs that you have, and the certifications that you have really were so visible in this discussion. So, must thank you, and I'm sure that the audience also learned a lot. I got a couple of more questions that came in, but maybe we'll try to answer them one on one to the audience. Thank you
Sure.
very much, Anuradha. Thank you, and thank you to the entire audience. Wishing each one of you happy New Year once again.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you and everyone in the audience. Looking
Thank you.
forward. Bye.